Hello all, good evening, welcome, adab, sat sri akal, welcome to the show. Good evening, Dr. Pradanya, good to see you. First person to comment. Today we have Dr. Pradeep Shetty sir with us tonight and dynamic Dr. Shalini Agarwal ma'am with us as a host. Good evening ma'am and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Abhishek.
We have so many people joining in so early tonight. Dr. Harish Mohan, Dr. Dinesh Jain, Dr. Kirti ma'am, good evening, good to see you every time.
All
As a first
Pradeep fans, I
participant.
think.
Yes, Dr. Dipali, Dr. Anupam Poddar, Dr. Mridula, Dr. Dinesh Jain. Good to see everybody. Thank you so much for the overwhelming response to all of us. There are plenty of lectures in the pipeline. We will be announcing them very soon for all of you. I would request Dr. Pradeep Shetty sir to join us. Please welcome Dr. Pradeep Shetty sir. Good evening and welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shalini ma'am. Thank you.
Hi, Pradeep. Good to see
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Same here, ma'am. Same here.
I'll request Dr. Shalini ma'am to give a brief introduction about Pradeep sir.
Okay, so this is like the easiest introduction which I've ever done. So yeah, I've known Pradeep for a very long time, a decade and a half. That's a very, very long time to know somebody. And he's working in the College of DY, Dr. DY Patil Dental College in Pimpri since 2003. He's currently a professor in the Department of Conservative Dentistry and Endodontics, and he is the holder of a PhD degree in addition to being an MDS, and he is the assistant editor at the Journal of Association for Dental Research and Scientific Development. He himself has published a lot of papers and has conducted various studies as a principal investigator. His strength, as per me, is that he is an excellent teacher. He's not only an excellent teacher, it's his teaching is his passion, and he revels in teaching. And he is the director and mentor at the Center for Advanced Dentistry in Pune. And he's a superb clinician who would spend a lot of time in the clinic and practically sleep there if he wasn't so scared of the repercussions that would arise from that. So he also, in addition to all this, he is also a resource speaker for Dentsply India, Micromega France, 3M ESPE, and he's also a former opinion leader with VDW. But let me not go on and on about Pradeep, because you're going to hear what he says to you about a broken tooth. He's going to tell you the spoken and the unspoken truth about it. And I can assure you that you're going to enjoy this lecture a lot. So over to you now, Pradeep.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, Shalini ma'am. Thank you. And I would like to thank World Dental Association entire team for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to speak in this big global platform. So WDA is doing wonderful job. It's organizing such webinars in a consecutive weeks. It's not an easy task. They're coordinating with everybody. They're doing a fantastic job. I always congratulate and I motivate them to do a much more work than this. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so much, sir.
yeah. So today, anyway, as ma'am said, I'm a hardcore teacher. Teaching is my passion. I just can't live without teaching. I'm more than a clinician. It's like half my passion is for teaching and half for as a clinician. So as ma'am told long back, I'll have to speak to in this forum, and ma'am suggested we thought of speaking about this topic, like fractured tooth or a broken tooth. So see today, because it's a part of traumatic injuries, because we have all learned traumatic injuries from third BDS, final BDS, in internship, and various specialty. Like if you're doing a pedo, if you're doing a surgery, or if you're doing a master's in endo, everywhere we read and learn about traumatic injuries. So traumatic injuries is a big topic. It is not possible to cover entire within 1 hour. So we took a part of traumatic injuries, that is fracture, tooth fracture. So that is how we give a name. I gave a name: broken tooth, spoken and unspoken truth. So today, I'm not going to go much about the completely theoretical aspect of all. So we will discuss about the clinical aspect. So we'll have a wonderful clinical session. So I'll try to show some cases and I'll try to share some experiences of mine. So because I'm doing a clinical practice. I have my clinic since 2004. So it's been around 16 year now. So I'm practicing specialty practice. I'm doing a general practice, everything. So I'll try to discuss certain clinical features and clinical aspects of a broken tooth or a fractured tooth, and which is that the facts might not be told to you sometimes, or might be dealt to you, or sometimes that's the reason it is spoken and unspoken truth. Some you may be knowing, or some you might not be knowing, and some are the facts which we have to deal with the fractured tooth. Okay, that is how the topic came. So you must have in day-to-day practice, we come across with the lots of cases. Okay, because not like regularly, but often we get the cases, like especially a kid falls down from the while playing. Okay, they come, their parents may be scared and they'll rush to the clinic, and they're sometimes bleeding, child is bleeding, they come to you. So immediately you have to do a treatment plan. Or sometimes you may get cases where due to a sports injury, the kid or the person will be playing, or the kid is playing. So you get the cases. These sports injuries are very, very common, and sometimes you may get accident cases. All this because it is a traumatic injury, a part of traumatic injury. When the traumatic injury occurs, maybe because of the while playing, or sports injuries, or accident, or something like that, you get a tooth, or sometimes like that only, like without any accidental history. Sometimes patient comes with a vague pain. Patient complains that because I cannot recognize which tooth is paining. They give a vague type of pain, like ear is paining or jaw is paining while biting. So it becomes sometimes very, very difficult to diagnose. Okay, so fractures of the tooth are one thing which it is very important, is you have to examine properly. So examination and diagnosis is the key in successful treatment for a fracture. Okay, because for example, for a dental caries or a simple decay, it's very easy to recognize. It is very easy to, but in a fracture line, hairline fractures, or a crazed lines, or a cracked tooth, it is very, very difficult to come to a diagnose, or in fact, to localize the tooth also becomes very difficult. Okay, so we'll have to do a proper examine, because what happens in a traumatic injury, whenever occurs, maybe because of fracture, it occurs to the tooth, it makes a lots of changes in periodontium, yeah, pulp, or bone. Okay, so we'll have to do some tests like vitality test, percussion test, or radiographs. IOPA makes a lot of difference. We'll have to take an IOPA sometime. In adjunct to IOPA, we'll have to take CBCT, because the CBCT is becoming a norm now. If you are not able to identify the lesion or identify the site, we usually go for a CBCT. So all this thing with examination or diagnostic tools, we should come to a conclusion and classify the type of fracture. Because why the classification is so important? Because every treatment depends upon the classification. Because unlike other tooth related injuries, here when the traumatic injuries are a fractured tooth, we have to classify, then we'll come to a proper diagnosis. Okay, so the classification, when we talk about, I'm not going to go detail about classifications of traumatic injuries. So there are lots of classifications, more than, it's for 2000 till 2017, because the classification they started in 1936. Is a Brower have classified the fractures of a teeth in 1936. 2007, around 25 classifications has been done. Now, after 2007 to 2020, another 20 classifications has been added. So there are around 20, 45, 50 classifications are there. So it is very difficult to by heart or understand or to learn all these classifications. We should remember few classifications which is very important. So one classifications which we all know is Ellis classifications, where Davis has modified it later. So this is the Ellis classification is very, very common, and we have to remember certain classifications of WHO or Anderson classifications. All these classifications gives us an idea where what exactly the fracture is or the traumatic injury is. So I was reading certain articles where the modifications of a classifications. One article which is got my attention is Kapil Lumba et al. In 2010. They have made some modifications, or they proposed some classifications. The classification is very simple. What they did is they made a clinical classification. So they made a type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4 classification. And type 1 is about horizontal plane, anterior teeth fracture in a horizontal plane, anterior teeth fracture in a posterior plane, and type 3 is fracture in a vertical plane, and type 4 is oblique fracture. By keeping this fracture classification in mind, I modified it for this today's discussion or a webinar. So I modified it. We are discussing entire session on this basis of this classification or this topics. I can say more than a classification. I can say a topics. Okay. So or a subheadings. So we are going to discuss today horizontal fracture, vertical fracture, and to some extent oblique fracture. So today's entire session is about horizontal fractures and vertical fractures. In that, again, subdivided into crown fracture, root fracture, crown root fractures, and vertical fractures is subdivided into crown fracture, root fracture, and we are going to discuss about anterior teeth fracture and a posterior teeth fracture in each. Okay, this is how the flow of the session is going to be today. Okay, first one is horizontal fracture. Horizontal fracture, we all know that it's the perpendicular to the long axis of the tooth, horizontal fracture or a transverse fractures. So the horizontal fractures can be a crown. It can be the simple class 1, class 2, class 3, Ellis class 1, class 2, class 3, or a root fracture. It may be a crown and root fracture, or just a root fracture. Okay. So first the fracture what we are going to discuss today is crown fracture. So crown fracture is the one where it can be, we can say it's a very common, okay, common in all the fractures. Maybe it's in that we can say it is anterior teeth is more common, okay. So in anterior teeth fracture, we are discussing about the crown fracture. In that we are discussing about the anterior teeth crown fracture. In that there are two categories: uncomplicated and a complicated fracture. So the word itself says it's uncomplicated. It is not complicated. It's very simple fracture. Like Ellis class 1 and class 2 comes under uncomplicated. There is fracture at enamel and fracture at dentate. Complicated fracture is when if it involves the pulp, or if it involves the root or the cervical area. Yeah, that's all complicated. The treatment also complicated. The first one is uncomplicated. We'll start from a simple fracture. That is uncomplicated crown fractures of anterior teeth. So we can say it's the incidence level of fracture or a fracture of anterior teeth is very common. That is around 18 to 22% of the anterior teeth, as I told you. So there's a very highly common fracture which is occurring in the oral cavity. In that, around 50% are uncomplicated. So that is the good thing. That is 50% of anterior teeth fracture, which is there in the 18 to 22 of overall fractures, are uncomplicated and simple to treat. Okay, they don't involve the dental pulp. So this is when it is simple, and the treatment also very simple. It is simple enamel restoration with a composite resin. Okay, as a direct composite resin, or sometimes we can do a reattachment of the fractured structure. So when like Ellis class 1, class 2, like the enamel fracture or a dentin fracture, which is not involving the pulp, so it's a simple to restore, because as we told, the composite restoration, direct composite restoration is the one area where we can do it. But unfortunately, sometimes what happens, we are doing composite restorations. The many clinicians face difficulty do a class 3 or a class 4 composite restoration. They always complain that we usually find a demarcation line. What happens? It's maybe our education is like that. When we learn total in the entire BDS level, we learn about composites from second BDS, maybe material science or a first BDS initially. So then until final year, we learn about the material science, but not much of practical. we get a demo most of the time. We do give a demo, but not much of a practical experience or a clinical experience. When you go to an internship, so we do certain practice of composite dressing, maybe anterior or maybe posterior. So when we in an internship, what happens? You tend to not to show to the staff sometimes when you start working on with your own method. So sometimes college has it's a limited shades are available, limited light cure machines are available. So you tend to finish the cases fast. So what happens? You don't give much importance to the material aspect or a clinical aspect of it. In that, there is a one big thing which always the clinicians complain, that demarcation. So demarcation line makes you did a good restoration, you used a good material, but when you find the you can, if you make out which is the composite restoration, it is like after doing so much hard work, it doesn't look nice, and patients also complains that we can make out which is the restoration. So for that reason, what exactly we have to give is bevel. Very, very important as bevel. If you give a good bevel, in my clinical practice, I give two bevels. One is primary bevel, other one is secondary bevel. Primary bevel, where I give the primary bevel. If it is a tooth is broken, I give the edge. Like at the edge of a tooth, I give a primary bevel. Like you are smoothing the unsupported enamel. And then to the surface, to the tooth surface, it is like a wrapping the tooth, like I give a secondary bevel. So primary bevel in the little more like a 45-degree angulation, and a secondary bevel from the primary bevel to the tooth surface, it will merge with the tooth surface. It will go maybe to the half of the tooth sometimes. Okay, bevel. If you give a good bevel, if you give a nice bevel, so it is very, very easy to inhibit the demarcation line. And then third thing which you have to understand is bonding strategy. We should know what bonding agent we are going to use, whether it's a 5th generation or a 7th generation or an 8th generation, and what exactly the bonding strategy, where you use the 5th generation. 5th generation and a 7th generation, their 5th generation is total H, where you H and bond, where 7th generation is a self H bond, or it can be sometimes called as a universal bond. In a fifth generation bond, what we do is it has a good bond strength for enamel as well as dentin, whereas your 7th generation bond has a good bond strength to enamel and a dentin, but enamel bond strength to the with the 5th generation is better. So if you are that is the reason selective etch people we do, because selective etch is etching on the enamel. Okay, so that it nicely bonds and don't etch the dentin, where because dental tubules are open, there are chances of pulp is getting involved. So where if it is a cavity is very the fracture line is very deep, if it is going very near to the pulp, if you use a self etch or a selective etch is better, because what happens if you remove the smear layer, there are chances that if you use an acid, there are chances that pulp may get divide or a necrose after some time. In such cases, when it is very, very near to the pulp, it is very important to give a pulp protection. Remember this, whenever there is a fracture, whenever there is a class 4, class 3 fracture, pulp protection is very, very important, because we must have seen in our clinical practice that the good restorations, they have done a wonderful restorations, which is kept very near to the pulp. The tooth goes for a necrosis after some time, because or a tooth becomes a non-vital after some time, because majorly because of maybe it is the tooth is not because of chemical or smear layer is removed, or smear layer is not properly done, or a cavity preparation is not properly done. That is the reason tooth gets getting non-vital. So you have to give a pulp protection. It can be with the liner, with the calcium hydroxide liner, or better liner like MTA or a biodentin. Okay, so you can use a pulp protection using that. It's in a class LS class 2. It's not a direct pulp capping. It is an indirect pulp capping. We can use a biodentin or a MTA, which showed a better clinical results, which has the dentin bridge formation is when compared to the time tested calcium hydroxide. Biodentin and MT has a wonderful calcific bridge formation, so you can use that. Then the major portion is what we learned in our first videos or the second videos, dental anatomy. So we should know how to carve a tooth. We should know how to make a macroscopic structures and microscopic structures of the tooth, or we have to give an anatomy of the tooth which looks like the one which is lost. Means we are restoring form and function of the tooth. That is very important. So as I told you, bevel, there are 2-3 types of bevels are available. We give a primary bevel or a secondary bevel. I usually give this like this bevel, like a primary bevel and a secondary bevel to the half of the tooth. Okay, there are so many studies has been done about the bevel, how much, what bevel is better, what which is the good, how much length or a depth of a bevel should be there. All these studies have been done. There are Xu et al. In 2012. They have done a study. They said that as a stair chef chamfer or a 2 bevel is for a good restoration it is required. And Donley et al. In again they have said that chamfered bevel is good. And again Tandy et al. They also said the chamfer bevel and a 2 bevel is it's good. So chamfer bevel or a primary bevel or a secondary bevel with the 2 length or a depth is very, very important, and it is crucial for a longevity and for to hide the demarcation line. So this is one of my case where I have we got a patient where he this both Ellis class 1 and Ellis class 2 fractures. You can see the one is Ellis class 1 and 1 is Ellis class 2, and both the patient was, he broke a tooth and immediately he came, and what we do is in my clinic we do a simulation. Treatment simulation using a digital DTS software. So we do a digital simulation and show the patient, and this is how it will look like. And it's very important in the clinical practice. It is to show the patient, because it's instead of imagining, because this is a simple one. This is a simple fracture. But when you're closing a midline diastema, when you're doing a veneer, so patient has to imagine. So this digital modification helps a lot for the patient to see what exactly is going to happen after the treatment. So this is one of a very good tool in this modern era. So you can get it done and so show the patient. But thing is, you have to do it like that only. That is very important. If you show something else and if you can't do the same procedure, then patient will blame you. You've shown something and did something. So you have to do a simulation and you have to do it the same way. So this is how we did it. Like you can see this primary bevel and secondary bevel etched it and the final results. Okay, you can see it's nicely merged, and you cannot make out any demarcation line in the picture in the tooth. So this is another case of again Ellis class 2 fracture where we have done restorations. Okay, there's another. Say one more case where again class 4 in the corner of a tooth is broken. Again we've restored it with a direct composite resin. This is about the tooth where you are restoring it, simple restoration with the composite resin. But nowadays, composite restoration can be done in a very fantastic way because there are so many material sciences improved. The shades are wonderful. The material itself is very good. So it's easy to do restorations because you have a wonderful tools also. There are so many brushes, stains, and all. So if you know a little bit, and it will be very difficult to easily do. So in a reattachment case, we have developed, that is Chosak et al. Have done a reattachment first in 1964. If a patient comes with a fractured fragment, if a patient comes to your clinic with a fractured fragment, what you have to do is a fracture. If a patient visited your clinic like with enamel so what I have to do is you have to do one bevel. You have to give a bevel on the tooth surface nicely. You can say a circumferential bevel all around the tooth, like buccal side, mesial distal side, and a palatal side. And some people prefer V-shaped enamel notch. You can give a V-shaped notches, but not very deep. A small V-shaped enamel notch so it merges like V-shaped notches. So when you apply a composite resin or a adhesive resin, it nicely goes into the notch. And you can do a superficial internal groove also can be done on the fractured fragment, or you can do a over contour on the fracture line. You can just like a secondary bevel, you can give a over contour, or we can give a chamfer at the fracture line after bonding, or simple attachment with it. But I don't recommend a simple attachment without a preparation, because what happens, there are chances of it may come out. De-attachment is more. So what is the advantage of doing a reattachment? What is the advantage of if a patient gets a fractured fragment, it is better to do a reattachment. 100%. There is no looking back. Only thing is what we have to do is the matters. What matters is a reattachment. It's like what if a patient how the tooth fragment is, that matters a lot. If the patient gets a tooth fragment after a week, if it is completely dehydrated, there is no use, because what happens, it does not match with the tooth structure. If a patient gets a tooth fragment immediately after the fracture, if a patient stores it in the saline or a patient's saliva or in a hydrated area, so if they get the tooth, and if you check it, when you check it, it is nicely matched to the tooth, so always is better, because it is a biological restoration where you are not doing any completely restoring it with the artificial one. We are restoring the patient's own tooth with the adhesive resin. And it is ultra conservative, where we are giving a less bevels, less, you are not applying too much of composite resin, okay, and looks very natural, very, very natural. And sometimes it is, people tells that it is a protection factor, because what happens if at all patient falls again, because of this attached structure, it acts like a protective bond. It debonds by itself, or it acts as so it does not reach the underlying tissues. So this is one case of mine. Again, patient came with the fractured fragment. You can see that it's a class 2 fracture. It is very near to the pulp, but pulp is not exposed, and patient was got a tooth fragment. Okay, so I tried with the attaching it. First, we have to check it out whether it is nicely attaching or not. Then we have to check, and palatally as well as both the side, because it is important to check that. Then we make the bevel, as you can see here, internal grooves I made, small grooves I made. Okay, make a bevel and do the same. What I did is here I gave a small V-shaped notch on the tooth, and plus I gave up primary and secondary bevel, and attached the tooth structure with the adhesive resin and polished it. See, nicely it is set. It has merged. The natural appearance has come. The tooth is like restored to its original form and function. So it is done in 2017, 18, in early 18. So last week I called the patient for a follow-up. So after this follow-up, I have seen. Say, can you see this? After 2 years, see the fracture line nicely merged to the tooth. Okay, in the X-ray you can appreciate. Plus the tooth is certain amount of the plaque was there. I cleaned it out, and can you see the same? The natural appearance is there. Absolutely no differences. Absolutely no difference. Same in the palatal aspect as well. So this is I'm going to follow it up, this case, and this is how, again, if you do it, it will last long. Definitely your how much bite also important. If it is a deep bite and all, it may come out at a protrusive moment, but still it is like a same natural tooth. You're not making much of a difference, like how it was before. The same way, it is the less chances of getting a occlusion. It is more chances of getting occlusion correct in this reattachment. So next entity is complicated crown fractures, where the tooth, where pulp is involved, or it is whole crown is involved. So in that it is 5 to 8% of the incidence rate. Okay, it exposes the pulp. Okay, then in that there are two categories. So 1/3 is your uncomplicated fracture, where only enamel and dentin is it. So the another middle third, if it is a fracture is involving the coronal third and a middle third, that is one part, or fracture involving the coronal third, middle third, and a cervical third. So okay, that is. So we are discussing about middle third fractures and the cervical third fractures. Okay, middle 1/3 fractures and a cervical 1/3. So if it is only involve the middle 1/3, pulp is exposed. It may be a pinpoint exposure or completely tooth is exposed. Okay, if it is a pinpoint exposure, okay, if it is a pinpoint exposure, patient is a young patient, healthy pulp, or immediately they reported to the dental clinic, then it is always you consider a direct pulp capping or a pulp bottom. It is better, because what happens, it's like it is young pulp. So most of the time what happens, pulp has a very good vitality rate. So when you apply and dentin, the pulp protection or a direct pulp capping materials are good enough. The Biodentin and IMTA is very, very good and very promising results they have. So this will make the tooth will become vital and it will survive. Okay, but thing is, you have to maintain a complete sterile atmosphere. You cannot infect the tooth surface. If pulp is infected, then it will be difficult, and the tooth will become non-vital later. Okay, the sterile condition, the way you do, the clinical skill you have, that matters for the success of a pulp capping, direct pulp capping. Or if pulp is completely involved, or a pulp is becoming bigger exposure, then it looks like a bright red, okay, or sometimes it looks like a bluish or a cyanotic or ischemic appearance. So in such cases, if you can expect that pulp may go for a regressive changes. So it is better not to do if you can try with the with direct pulp capping. But what happens, that's what, it's an unspoken truth, is that it is, everybody tells that it is we can do, or we can say why to do this thing, but the truth is, after some time, tooth becomes non-vital. Many a times we have come across with the cases in an institution level, or a college level, or academic purpose. We can do all these cases with the pulp capping, but in a clinical scenario, patient comes with a non-vital teeth. It's very becoming a non-vital. Or patient gets a periapical lesion, or a patient comes with a swelling after the filling. So it becomes difficult to handle them in a clinical practice. So that is how, in such cases, if you're finding that tooth is going to become a necrosis, or tooth is going to become it's going to become a irreversible changes, or so that in such cases it is better to do a root canal treatment. Okay, do a root canal treatment, or you can in that, after the root canal treatment, if the pulp is young and the apex is not closed, tooth is young, and then apex is not, and you can go for apexogenesis or apexifications with the good materials. And major thing is, you'll have to treat as early as possible, so that if more of the time period, the faster you treat, and better will be the results. Other patients will have a severe sensitivity. Suppose if it is sometimes no pulp exposure, then as I told you, you can do a reattachment, but by considering the stress bearing area. So this is the second entity, where it was middle third. Now we are coming to a third entity, where crown fracture of anterior tooth crown fracture, where cervical 1/3 is involved. Now cervical 1/3 is involved, where you can see in these cases, you can see cervical 1/3 only is left. Entire 2/3 is gone. Here again, the palatal cusp is palatal part of canine is gone. So you can see in the third picture, it is completely, when you remove the palatal crown, it is almost at the cervical level. Okay, so in such cases, it is, our treatment will be we cannot do any pulp capping or something like that. We'll have to go for a root canal treatment straight away, and root canal treatment and with the post-end core. So you have to see, again, I would like to mention here, because I can sure that there are so many young clinicians are there, young people who want to start your clinic. And so what happens, there are some myths about post-end core. Some people are not believe in a post-end core. It is not so. I personally believe that post-end core, if you do it in a correct manner, it survives. It is not, the post-end core is been implants, because what happens, it's an implant practice. Sometimes I'm not complaining that every tooth, I'm not telling that every tooth you have to go for a post-end core. It's like, it is, every tooth is like, you should not remove all the tooth which could have been saved. That is, I as an endodontist, as a savior of a tooth, I firmly believe that if you do a post-end core in a perfect way, it survives. I'll show you a cases of 10 years or 12 years cases where it survived. But problem is what? Why post-end core fails? Because people don't give a damn about ferrule, don't understand ferrule properly. If you don't understand ferrule properly, then the post-end core fails. If you know post-end core, if you know ferrule, what ferrule it is, what is the importance of a tooth, what is the length of a root is available, then definitely post-end core survives. But you have to do it, you have to select a case which is good for a post-end core. And when you do a post-end core, there is, as we told, that there is exactly, it has to be above, there is 2 mm ferrule should be there. It is a textbook wise 2 mm, one for a core, 1.5 to 1 mm for as a core ferrule, where your core rests. In this picture you can see this is 1 mm, 0.5 to 1 mm is core ferrule, and 1 mm is crown ferrule, where your future crown is going to rest. Remember this, your crown is always, it should be on the sound structure. it always should be on the sound tooth structure. It cannot be either. It cannot be on the core itself. It has to rest circumferentially on the tooth structure, so that the forces which is applying on the tooth will transfer to the root. Otherwise, what happens if one side there is a crown, other side there is the crown is situated on the tooth side, other side if it is situated on the core, the tooth is going to break. The post and core is going to get fractured, or it become a failure. So you have to get the crown has to be on the sound structure, and the core also has to be on the sound structure. Then it'll work. And your suprabony tooth structure should be around 4.5 mm in height, and 1 mm thickness should be there for a ferrule. If all these things are satisfied, definitely you can go for a post and core. The tooth will survive, and you'll have to make sure that sometimes if it is to achieve a biological width, you'll have to remove gingival recontouring, as well as sometimes you have to do a soft tissue recontouring. Sorry, bone recontouring. So when you talk about so if you give a crown lengthening procedure, and there are 3 options for when there is a tooth fractures at the cervical level. There's a first option is CLP, it's simpler. And a second option, and the best option, is orthodontic extrusion, where you are doing a physiologic movement of the tooth. But it is time consuming. It takes little time. The patient should be that much, they should ready to wait for the third and the least option is surgical extrusion. Okay, this is all has been, it's a 3 methods are very important to get the tooth out. So this is another case of cervical third fracture of the crown, which is involved the pulp, where you can see here the patient came with the fracture. So there was here CLP was not required because you can see a ferrule everywhere. You can see enough tooth structure. So what happens is tooth was a little out. That is the reason it is broke. The lateral incisor was little buccally placed. So what the patient, I told that we'll change the angle. By when anyway it is broke, now we'll change the angle so that we'll make it inside the tooth. So what I did is, because post and core, using a post and core, if the tooth is fractured, it is better to change the angle using a post and core, because it's like the tooth broke because of that is buccally placed. If the tooth buccally placed, there are chances of fracture. If at all patient gets one more hit, it'll break again. So it's always, if the tooth is buccally placed, or it's always to change the angle, get it into a normal plane. Here I did the same thing, change the angle, put a post and core. For changing the angle, ideal is cast post. So you can do it with the fiber post. Ideal is cast post. So here I've changed the angle. Can you see now? This is a 4th picture. Very nicely, it is merged with the tooth, and it's almost come to a same level of central incisor and the canine. Now this is another case where again it's broke. The tooth broke at the level of a cervical area, where you can see some amount of the one side there was a little ferrule was left. Again, we did a slight gingivectomy or a CLP on the only one side, and did a post and core and did a crown. Here because of the PFM, it is not matched perfectly the shade, but you can see majorly I would like to show you about the gingival health and a gingival adaptation of the crown. See, beautifully it is adapted, and see the papillas, everything. And now this is about the anterior teeth fractures in a horizontal way, and we are going to a posterior teeth fracture in a horizontal manner. So it can be 1 cusp or a 2 cusp or a 3 cusp or 4 or more cusps. Okay, so like this, you may get a tooth with the 1 cusp, you may get a tooth with the 2 cusps, or you may get a little more deeper with the pulpal exposure. So it's a simple one. If it is a 1 cusp, then you'll have to go for a direct and indirect composite. Directly you can apply a composite and make a cuspal build-up method, or you can initially, people used to do a pin retained amalgam restoration, but nowadays we don't practice pin retained amalgam restorations. We can do the bonded amalgams, and both, it's not practiced more. Inlays, onlays is very good. Casting and a CAD-CAM wise, nowadays we get a CAD-CAM inlays. It's whenever 2 or 3 cusps are fractured, it is inlay or a onlay is always better. Okay, endocrowns and crowns if the pulp is exposed. So, and the another entity in a crown fracture is entire crown is fractured, like to the cervical line. Okay, like fracture of crown en masse. So in this case again, where here in the initial pictures, when the cervical area is fractured, there was need not do a bone recontouring sometimes. Okay, because it was every whole tooth structure is above the, because it's in the cervical line. That cervical area tooth is it's a sound, so we need not do a bone recontouring. Sometimes, if it is required in a minor way, either mesial or distal, wherever the ferrule you are not getting, we can do a gingival recontouring. Where here in this case, when you have a tooth which is fractured, entire crown is fractured to the cervical level, we'll have to do a gingival recontouring. But many a times you'll have to do a slight amount of the bone recontouring for the biological width, to achieve a biological width. Here again, we did a recontouring. You can see this. We gave a bridge, and there's another case. See this. See, it depends upon the CLP. Again, the crown. I believe that crown lengthening procedure should be done by a periodontist, because periodontists are much more aware of biological width than like a restorative dentist or something. They are the best one to do. So, and my friend Dr. Sharath, he does. It's been many years in my clinic. He does a good CLP. We save a lot of tooth doing a CLP. Okay, so we always say implants can wait. Okay, so this is the area. Again, it's nicely, you can see a exposed tooth and a gum. So say this, it's after healing. One thing you have to remember is after doing a CLP. So say today how the clinical process goes. The patient comes to you today with the broken tooth. Okay, patient came, and so you got you have seen the tooth. It's going for a root canal treatment. You have to do a root canal treatment. You start with the root canal treatment. You finish in a single sitting or a two sitting, multiple sitting, whatever. It is up to you. And after that, immediately, then once the obturation is done, then what I do is, my clinic, when the patient comes to you with the fractured tooth or a crown completely fractured, where you are having a doubt about the biological width, I call a periodontist before I promise the patient that I'm going to save the tooth. See, if you are saving the tooth, give wholehearted effort. It should not be like you're doing something CLP or cutting a gums with the blade and cautery or something like that without knowing what biological width and what is going to achieve. It's because patient is going to believe you that you're going to save it. Give a full-hearted and never ever give a false promise, because this is all the procedures where patient's acceptance is very, very important, and patient has to be careful about food habits. Absolutely careful. You have to give out pros and cons, and you will have to tell that it can be saved. So if your implant will be can be, because what happens, implant also not like a lifetime, because after some time, if the bone loss occurs, it's again putting an implant is a task. But if your tooth breaks or a portion core fails, but it acts as a bone banking, the tooth itself, the bone itself, it stays there. So implants can anytime it can come into a place. But you have saved the tooth maybe for a few years or for lifetime. The patient has a positive mindset that the doctor has saved my tooth. And you all agree with me. Your root is the best implant is gifted by a God. The Almighty has done a wonderful job. He's given a wonderful roots, which has a periodontal ligament, which has a proprioception, which implants cannot. I do lots of implants. I practice implants, but still I don't remove every tooth. I try to save the tooth. If does not, I'll show you some cases as well. If does not, then implant comes into place. Not like implant is the first choice in such cases. Then the patient, then we discuss with the periodontist whether it's worth to save or not. We discuss about the biological width, we discuss about the attached gingiva, and if they say that it is okay, it can be saved, then we tell the patient that it can be saved. So the first clinical judgment, whenever there is a fracture occurs, it is multidisciplinary approach. It is absolutely multidisciplinary approach when here onwards. Okay, till uncomplicated fracture, it's fine. It's our discretion. When it involves the periodontal ligament, when it involves the alveolar bone, so you'll have to have a multidisciplinary approach with the periodontist, with the surgeon, or with the orthodontist. All. It has to be a collective effort to save the tooth. So what we do is as I told you, I started with the RC, then complete the root canal completely, and then after that the CLP comes. The periodontist come and they'll do a CLP, put a suture and go. The next day itself, if the CLP is done today, tomorrow itself, I'm going to do build a post and core. It's very important, because as early as possible, you will have to build the post and core. Otherwise, the gums which is cut, again, it will regrow. it is very important that immediately you'll have to build a tooth. And next important thing is you have to give a temporary crowns. Should not directly go to a permanent crown. You should go to give a temporary crown, and the temporary crowns will be there for around 15 to 20 days, so that the entire another week for a suture removal, another week for a healing. So, and 15-20 days or a month, how much ever time you can wait. So do the wait. You have to wait with the temporary crown, and then whole of a gum will get adapted, or a gum will get more shrunk, and you will get more tooth surface for a permanent crown to adapt. We always follow that. CLP, next day post and core, third day will be a temporary crown, or same day we'll do a temporary crown. Okay. So give a temporary crown and send the patient 15-20 days. You remove the temporary crown, make a gingival. You'll have to do the gingival margin for a crown preparation, get a ferrule properly, and give a permanent crown. So this is a case where it's again same fracture occurred. So see the ferrule completely, nicely ferrule entirely, crown, core, and a crown ferrule. Did a cast post in this, and the patient, it is 10 years back. We didn't take a much of a photography there that time. Now after 10 years, the patient came back when his tooth got chipped off. The crown got chipped off on the distal aspect. Then took a follow-up. See the crown chipped off because patient had something, but see the adaptation at the gums. See the margin. So it's as simple as like how it was before. Okay, this is how the crown lengthening, and this is how tooth survives. Okay, so this is about the crown fractures. Okay, now we are going to another entity, that is root fracture, horizontal root fractures. Okay, so in a horizontal root fracture, what happens? So there are so many tissues involved, like dentin, cementum, pulp. Okay, periodontal ligament is involved, or alveolar bone is involved. So it has to be a collective. As I told you, it is a multidisciplinary approach. Whenever it is involved, the root will have to with the periodontist, we'll have to consult the surgeons. Okay, then do a management. Horizontal root fractures mainly affect the maxillary anterior teeth. Childhood obesity, horizontal overlap, upper central incisor protrusion, many reasons, or insufficient lip closing, all are the etiological factors or predisposing factors for the fracture, horizontal fracture. So here we can divide horizontal root fractures into three types: fracture at the cervical third, fracture at the middle third, and fracture at the apical 1/3. The cervical 1/3 again can be subdivided into two types: subcrestal coronal third fracture, or a cervical third fracture; supracrestal coronal third fracture, or a cervical 1/3 fracture. So this is the one of a consideration, or how we have to go about it. Whenever maxillofacial trauma occurs, whenever there is a accident occurs, the horizontal root fracture is suspected. If you are suspecting a horizontal root fracture from the clinically or from the patient history, so you will have to ask whether it is a horizontal. When you see a clinical, if it is yes, definitely, then you have to take it. It is very clear. It is obvious. It is clinically seen, and patient is also telling. Then directly you can go for a periapical radiograph, and if the periapical radiograph, if it is the HRF is visible or horizontal root fracture is visible, then you have to decide where exactly the fracture is. It can be apical 1/3, it can be middle 1/3, or it can be a coronal 1/3. It is an apical 1/3. It's always said that you can keep it like that only. You just have to splint for 4 to 6 weeks. You have to. It's a splint is like a non-rigid material splint, functional non-rigid splint. Go for a 4 to 6 weeks. If it is a middle 1/3, then take a CBCT to rule out the oblique course of fracture. If it is in the coronal 1/3, then you have to remove the coronal fragment, and either you can reattach it, or you'll have to go to a CLP and like post and core and every matter. Okay. Suppose if there is not much of scene, then you have to take a IOPA to reconfirm it. Okay. Then if it is it's not visible on the periapical radiography, but it looks like it's a fracture, then you can take a CBCT to consider. Okay. So all these things has to be done. This you have to come to a conclusion that what exactly to be done. Then if we are going to the first level of a fracture of the root, that is fracture at the cervical area, fracture at the cervical 1/3. So there are two possibilities. Okay, patient come with the patient had a history of trauma. So patient come to your clinic with either with the fractured fragment, they're carrying a fractured fragment, or they lost the fractured fragment. So the two possibilities is the first possibility when patient comes to clinic with the fractured fragment. Say if patient comes like this, or it is attached to the tooth surface, or it has come out. They're carrying it. Okay. So this is one video I'm going to show where we have done a reattachment of a fractured tooth fragment cervical in the college. This is a fractured fragment. You can see it's in the cervical 1/3 of the root. We have to make a groove on the fractured fragment. Can you see in the center there is a groove? Then do a root canal treatment and check the post. Apply a post. You can make a groove on the notch. See the post So if a patient comes to a clinic without the fractured fragment, okay, like this. So first is you have to check for a fracture line and a mobility, whether it is any alveolar bone fracture, rule out that, take IOPA if required, take CBCT, assess the soft tissue injury, how much it is, how badly it is injured. History is very important, how it has happened, and you have to assess the periodontal status, biological width, initiate the RCT if access to canal is feasible. Sometimes what happens is the tissue grows inside, so you don't see the access cavity to open. In such cases, first CLP, then access cavity preparation, then because you should be able to see the access cavity preparation for instrumentation purpose. Then post and core, then temporary crown, as I told you, for 20 days to 1 month, then permanent crown. Okay, this is the same case where you can see. So in this case, what happened is like, it's a nice case which I've got. Patient came like this, and we did this thing, and I gave a nice temporary crown. Okay, so it's a one clinical scenario. If you give a beautiful temporary crown, patient does not come back sometimes. Same thing happened. Patient didn't come only for 6 months. With that, I told him not to come for 20 days to 1 month. Patient didn't come for 6 months. When the temporary crown came out, then he visited. So that time, see, I took a photograph. So now see, beautifully healed cervical area. Then I told the patient that now we have to do a complete treatment. What I told is because the patient, what happened in this patient, you can see this initial photograph. See, there is lateral is missing. Okay, see, canine is there, lateral is missing, and huge midline diastema. Okay, so the space, the mesodistal space from the one side to canine is huge. So then what I did is, here I did a root canal. Patient was now concerned. He said that I wanted to make it a smile makeover as well. What I did is I did a root canal treatment for a canine, and I turned make the canine into a lateral, and a premolar works like a canine, or it functions as a canine. So what I did is I did a crown. See the crown here, and one midline diastema. I told my technician that you give a crown till the midline. Okay, don't try to close anything. I'll do it with the composite resin for the other side. So other tooth, one, I close the midline diastema using a composite. So you can see this one mesial side is a composite resin, which is nicely merged to the tooth, and a 2-1 is a crown. It's all ceramic crown, IPS Empress. So when it is applied, so can you say this? Only thing is, the emergence profile is slightly from the distal side. That's okay. That because it's not seen much on when the patient this thing, but emergence because of the tooth angulation, because we cannot make the emergence profile into the mesial side. Okay, that was not possible because we recontoured the gingival contour or a papilla. So much we have done, but this was the best result we could give to the patient, where say canine looks like a lateral. This is the pre and post photo. So if the fractured fragments are not completely separated, okay, then you can splint for 2 to 3 minutes. So wait for a callus formation and it heals. Okay. If a fragment immobilization is not possible and extraction of the coronal, because it is splinting is not possible, then you'll have to remove the coronal segment. If the length of the apical segment is sufficient to maintain the crown root ratio, orthodontic extrusion is the best one to do. And a second entity now, root fracture, horizontal root fracture, second type, that is middle 1/3. So it is middle 1/3 is difficult to treat actually, and actually coronal 1/3 also difficult to treat, and the prognosis is also not favorable. There are so many researchers said that coronal fracture is not very favorable, and as well as the middle 1/3. Middle 1/3 is like tooth becomes may loose or exfoliated or a resorption. Sometimes it becomes pulp remains vital in the apical third, or entirely pulp becomes necrosis either in the coronal segment or at the apical third. So usually, sometimes people says that just do a endodontic therapy at the coronal segment. Don't touch anything to the middle third or a apical part of a fractured fragment. Okay. Then fill the wide fractured foramen with the MTA or biodentin, like a apexification, that is on the coronal segment of the fractured segment or a fractured part. Apical third kept like that, or you can do a orthodontic extrusion if it is the root length is enough. Okay. Now we'll come to the last part, that is apical 1/3. It's very favorable prognosis. Every paper, every research, every case paper, every case studies, they say that apical third is favorable practice, favorable prognosis. But usually it should be no treatment or only observation. Keep out of occlusion for 4 to 6 weeks, where we have splinted for 4 to 6, 2 to 4 weeks. Here we'll have to go for a 4 to 6 weeks sometimes, or sometimes more than that. Okay. So RCT depending upon the symptoms. Okay. Either you can, there are three things you can do it. Okay. 4 things. In fact, cleaning and shaping at the only coronal third. Clean, shape, obturate, only coronal third. Cleaning and shaping, obturate, coronal third, or surgical removal of the apical third if it is patient is symptomatic. Okay. If it is the area which is fractured, it is surgically is approachable. Cleaning and shaping, obturate both the fragments. Do cleaning and shaping if it is possible, do it. Okay. Or cleaning and shaping and intracanal medicament placement and obturation. You can place the intracanal medicament in between, like here. So what happens if you place the intracanal medicament, or if you leave it like that, or there are 4 types of healing takes place. Healing with the hard tissue, bone-like formation, or a reactionary dentin forms at the cervical area. It's a healing with the hard tissue. Healing with the connective tissue derived from a PDL and possibly from the pulp. This is also another possibility of healing, or healing of both, healing with interposition of bone as well as connective tissue. This may occur in young patients as well as the alveolar process grows vertically. Or 4th one is bad thing, which is very tooth goes for a toss where no healing takes place. Granulation tissue forms and inflammatory response occurs. Pulp goes for a necrosis. There will be a periapical lesion starts. These are all the things happens. Okay, so this is one case. In 2012, I treated. The patient came to my clinic with a simple root canal treatment. I did a root canal treatment. I did a cleaning and shaping. Patient left to his hometown. So he left to his hometown. He was hailing from Karnataka. So he went to his hometown, and what he did is, there was an election celebration was going on. He opened a bottle with the premolar. So what happens? He broke the tooth at the middle third, junction of a cervical third and the middle third. Sorry, junction of apical third or the middle third. So since I did a cleaning and shaping properly, I could able to when he come back, so I could able to do the obturation. So I did obturation. I properly cleaned it, put a intracanal medicament for, as I told you, put a intracanal medicament for some time, waited for some time so that it does not, there won't be communication between the oral cavity and the fracture line. Okay, then I did the obturation. I didn't give a crown. I kept it out of occlusion for 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, then in 2020, in January, patient came back for other tooth. I took an X-ray. See the healing, beautiful healing. Nature is amazing. Nature does wonders. I have not done anything. I just did an obturation. Body healed. it was the center portion is completely healed. Patient don't have any problems, no nothing. Patient is having everything, but I didn't touch the tooth because it's a functional. Why to touch the tooth and give a crown and make a tooth vulnerable for a fracture again? Just did like that. I just took an X-ray, did a follow-up. I treated the patient, the tooth which patient came, and kept like that. So this is 8 years. After 8 years, see the healing. Okay, so if you do it cleaning and shaping properly, if you do, there is no infection as such, there are healing takes place. Okay, so healing with connective tissue is the first picture, healing with bone and connective tissue is the second picture, and there is no healing in the third picture. Okay, so when a fractures occurs with a multiple tooth, there are your options of premolars with a short root trunk, or you have a more roots. You can, depends upon the fracture line, there are two options. Either you have to do a resection of the tooth root which is involved, or you have to do a hemisection and remove the one side of a tooth if it is a multi-rooted teeth. Okay, then comes a crown root fracture. This is another case where you can say this. So this crown root fracture occurred where this completely fractured with the root, cervical third is gone. Okay, so this was the case. So again, I did a reattachment, same like how I've told you. Opened up, did a sectional obturation. I kept it little more so that in future I can close it little less. So then I did a post-end core. You can see 1/3 is kept. Okay, then restored it and reattached it like this. Patient was perfect for. I did it on how much? On 19th. Okay. Patient came. I did it on 2017. Okay. Patient came for a follow-up on 19. The tooth was sound and fine. When post-lockdown patient came back, he lost the crown. Okay, the tooth broke. He had something. He admitted he had a hard from the front tooth. He had chicken from the front. He cut the tooth, and by tooth broke, and by my bad, the tooth broke like a post also broke. You can see post is there. It's broke from the. So in the such cases again, I was reluctant to do again CLP and remove the post and everything. It's broke, and he is a chronic non-vegetarian, and his bite was also like. I told him that he also admitted that I'll go for an implant. Then I placed an implant. In August we placed an implant last week. Okay, this can happen if a patient does not follow your instructions. This happens. It's always whenever you do a reattachment, instruction is perfect, and the patient should follow the instructions. Otherwise, they'll go for a toss. Your hard work, your attempt, everything will go. This is another video. Patient is a factory worker. He came to the roots from. So he did see the margin achieved. Only thing was here the margin is too high. It was not up to the mark because margin was very high. But since he was a factory worker, his owner was sponsoring his treatment. I wanted to close the midline diastema, and the patient and everybody, they were telling the reluctant, just give a crown, whatever is lost is like that only. So it was the profile and everything was not up to the mark because he had tooth was little out because the lower tooth was coming into contact. So I didn't have an option to change the angle because it was the overjet and overbite was bad. So to summarize about the horizontal root fractures, incisal third or a middle third favorable, apical third is favorable, and cervical or a middle third is not. It's not very favorable. Now, last part of my presentation, I'll take another 15 to 20 minutes for finish the second portion of my second and last portion, that is vertical fractures of the tooth. Vertical fractures of the teeth are more notorious for a bad prognosis. they have known for the prognosis is becoming, they are not a good prognosis. Horizontal prognosis for fractures are, it's better. Vertical fractures are not very good. And the reason may be the etiology. What is the cause for vertical fractures, or endodontally treated teeth, or sometimes pre-existing cracks, or a fatigue root fractures because of the bruxism, or a patient is having lots of stress on one tooth, single tooth. So the Luke et al., they have done a classifications based on the separation of the fragment, complete fracture or an incomplete fracture, based on the position of the alveolar crust, intraosseous fractures or supraosseous fractures. Okay, so it is again vertical or a longitudinal fracture, because it is your treatment plan completely depends upon the, and clinical presentation depending upon the fracture position, tooth type, how much time they have come after the fracture, the periodontal conditions of the tooth, and bone architecture against adjacent to the fracture. This all matters. This all makes the clinical presentation. Such fractures can either run through a buccolingual or a mesiodistal direction. It can extend up to roots. So what is the signs and symptoms? Because vertical root fractures, majority of the time, it is embedded with the periodontal ligament and the bone. You may not able to make out where exactly the fracture, like unlike a horizontal fracture. Vertical fractures, maybe patient comes with a complaint that mild discomfort and biting and chewing, or sensitive to cold and drinks, food, or a patient is having a pain on percussion, moderate to severe pain, sinus tract is formed, or a gingival swelling or a pockets. So prognosis is poor when the fracture line extends to the root, especially single rooted teeth. Okay, vertical or a longitudinal tooth fracture restricted to the crown can be restored with the bonded restoration with the guarded prognosis. If it is fractured at the cervical crown level, it can still, the prognosis is questionable. Okay, so how to do a diagnostic test for a vertical fractures? First thing is you have to do a direct vision. You have to check it out by probing or by seeing it properly. Okay, then you can do a dye. You can use a methylene blue dye or any other dye where you can make out the fracture line. You can use a dye, or you can do a pulp testing, or you can do a bite test using a tooth sleuth or a cotton roll. Okay, you can do the bite test. You have to probe if it is a single deep pocket or a isolated pockets, you can suspect for a fracture. Can do a trans illumination test with the fiber optic lights. Can do a microscopically, you can see in a magnification, under magnifications you can trace the sinus tract. Okay, so in that, one of the vertical tooth fracture, one of the very popular is called as cracked tooth syndrome, or green stick fracture, or an incomplete tooth fracture. So here you can see this, the fracture line. It is many a times it's so confusing, clinically confusing. A good clinicians, experienced clinicians, sometimes they miss this. Patients also gives a vague history. That I have seen people who have, instead of patient is complaining of patient complains multiple tooth, people have done multiple root canal treatment without identifying which tooth is having a problem. And people have done an extraction of multiple teeth without knowing which tooth is the problem. Okay, that is the reason it is a clinical challenge to identify and to tell. So cracked tooth syndrome is defined as fracture plane of unknown depth, which originates from the crown, passes through the tooth structure, and extends subgingivally. It was given by 1954 by Gibbs. He's termed as cuspal fracture odontologia. But it was more the world was it was exposed to the world, and it has been told to coin the term by Cameron at like cracked tooth syndrome. Why it is syndrome? Because it is there is no specific signs and symptoms. There are so many symptoms but in 2007, American Association of AEE, American Association of Endodontology, they said that it is not a cracked tooth syndrome. That syndrome word, they are not agree. But it's a controversy. The people say that cracked tooth syndrome. Some people say that it is just a cracked tooth or a fracture line. Okay, it's usually seen in 30 to 50 years, and it is seen in mandibular molars. Difficult to diagnose because the patient may complains vaguely, like sometimes patients have sinusitis, temporomandibular disorders, headaches, ear pain. Many a time patients have taken did a MRI and CT scan without knowing that what is paining, because head pains, everything. It is a very vague type of pain. So American Association of Endodontologists, they have in their document in 2008, the name that's cracking the cracked tooth code, they have divided 5 types, that is depicting the craze lines, the fractured cusp permanent in the cervical part, cracked tooth, proper cracked tooth from separation of tooth fragments, separated tooth fragments such as a split tooth, and a vertical root fracture. Okay, so if it is a small craze line, it is mostly seen in a crown. The symptoms are asymptomatic. Pulp status is vital, excellent. The prognosis is excellent. Vertical root fractures, poor. The prognosis is very poor, and it is seen in the root. Sometimes it's in the facial lingual. Vague pain mimicking the periodontal diseases. Okay, and split tooth, it's marked pain on chewing. Usually it pains while chewing. Okay, cracked tooth, acute pain on biting, occasionally with the sharp pain to cold. So, what is the etiology for a cracked tooth syndrome? Like a restorative procedures, it is inadequate cavity designs, not a perfect cavity design, or a stress concentration on a particular area. So, occlusal factors like masticated trauma, trauma from occlusion, or a functional forces. Okay, developmental factors, or an incomplete fusion of area of calcifications, or miscellaneous like foreign body or a thermal dental instruments, many things, or this all causing the cracked tooth syndrome, because it is not exactly known what exactly the cause. So what exactly the clinical features patients say? Sharp pain, because usually this is very important to diagnose the cracked tooth. Listen carefully and remember this very carefully. Sharp pain when biting on a certain tooth, which may get worse if the applied biting force is increased. Like majorly it's like it pains like when a patient says that like seeded bread when the patient having a seeded bread, so for the seed it pains, bread is okay. Well, or sometimes like patients say rebound pain, sharp fleeting pain occurring when the biting force is released from the tooth, which may occur when even fibrous food. Okay, pain when grinding the two teeth backward and forward and side to side. So this is all the vague pain type, they say, clinical features they say. Sharp pain when drinking cold beverages or eating cold foods. Lack of pain with the heat stimuli. Pain when eating or drinking sugary substances. Sometimes pain is well localized, sometimes it is vague, it is referred. So if you get a cracked tooth, if it is not sensitive, if you find the crack, sometimes you need not do any treatment, or you can give a crown. Okay, so if it's sensitive, you have to evaluate the crack, and if it is a minor, RCT and a crown. If it is a major, complete crack or a split tooth, better to extract the tooth and replacement. So if it is a small fracture, like a cuspal fracture within the dentin, then faciopulpal or lingopulpal line angle, then the prognosis is excellent. If the coronal vertical fracture that runs mesodistal into the dentin but not into the pulp, prognosis is good. But coronal vertical fracture that runs mesodistally into the dentin and limited to the crown, and it is considered to be poor. But if it is into the root completely, the prognosis is not very good. It is considered to be hopeless. If the buccolingually, if fractures occurring only on the crowns, okay, vertical fractures involving only on the crown, like there are two categories. Pulp may be exposed or pulp may not be. It's a small vertical fracture. If it is a pulp is exposed, it is not exposed. Fracture fragment is not completely separated. It can be bonded with the flowable composite. You need not do anything. You have it's a line, craze line or a fracture line. You can bond it. If the fragment is completely separated, then but pulp is not exposed, then tooth can be stabilized with the orthodontic band and restored with the composite. But if the pulp is exposed, if the line has gone to the pulp, it is then RCT, and then should be very careful. If you're cracked tooth, you have to do a occlusal reduction. Patient should be informed about the crack and should not have hard food on that side, otherwise crack will open. Always, if it is doing a root canal, doing a cleaning and shaping, the cracks can open completely and tooth may divide into two. It's all possibility should be told to the patient. And if it is a fracture line is completely separated, then smaller portion can be removed and then assess whether it can be saved or not. Biological width can be achieved or not. Then you can take a call whether to save or whether to extract entire tooth. Or if it is in the buccolingual side, if it is nothing is involved, only one center it is gone, you can do a bicuspidations. You can divide the cusp into two. You can divide into, make it like a two premolars into a molar. Then you can do a crown. Okay. Or if it is in the mesodistal fracture line like this, mesodistal. So first thing is you'll have to, what in my clinic, what I do is I remove the smallest portion of the tooth first. Okay, smallest portion. So remove the smallest portion like this. Okay, remove the smallest portion and assess it, then do the CLP if required, if it is ask a periodontist of the biological width, and then give a crown. Otherwise, remove entire tooth if not possible. Okay. Then vertical root fractures, it is a diagnostic challenge because fracture line is not at all visible because it's a vertical tooth fracture. It is looks like the diagnostic features, clinical features looks like a failed ascites or a sometimes periodontal disease because it's a mild dull ache. Because the one clinical features which is commonly seen in a pulpal pain and a periodontal pain is the same. Periodontal pain is dull, pulpal pain is sharp. Okay, so same clinical diagnostic test which I've mentioned in the earlier, like all the clinical diagnostic tests you have to do, plus you have to do a radiological examination. Like we have to do a you have to check for a radiolucent signs. When you took an X-ray, we have to check for either J-shaped lesion, or you have to check for a halo-like lesion, or you have to check for a radiopaque signs, or you have to check for a pattern of bone loss, and you take a CBCT. See, this is one case. You can see this here in this first picture in X-ray. You can see a complete J-shaped radiolucency. Can you see this J-shaped? Okay, this is a suggestive of RC-treated tooth, J-shaped radiolucency, suggestive of fracture, root fracture. Or you get a halo-like radiolucency, like entire root is covered with the radiolucent area. This is also you can suspect the fracture of a tooth, or deep isolated pocket. Only one that area of the root is there is a huge periodontal pocket, and then you have to, if the swelling is in the mid root level, if a swelling is in the apical area, that can be a periapical lesion. If the swelling is in the mid root or a junction of a middle third and a coronal third, then sinus tract is formed, and you have to, then it is you're suspecting a fracture. If it is suspecting a fracture, you have to do there is a sinus tract opening. You have to do
2506 GP should be placed, okay, like this. Give deeper and deeper till we get a resistance. Here we get a resistance. This is how we'll have to trace the. This is the tooth. You can see a swelling here and a sinus. We'll have to take an X-ray.
Next you can see a proper J shape, and it is coming back. Okay, halo-like region, suspecting the fracture. So this is one of this is how you have to find it. This is one nicely I found this in an article in a Swiss Dental Journal. So here they have seen it is completely, it's absolutely clinical view showing two mid root level swellings and half filled root, and see the Nair core they have done, and then see the fracture lines in the here also it's nicely seen. Okay, so in a CBCT level. So buccolingual fracture line, it's in a mandibular molar, root bicuspidation or a hemisection. Okay, maxillary molar, it is root resection. Okay, and here, depending upon the extent of the fracture, or a smallest portion of the fracture should be removed initially, and beyond the crystal bone, then biological as a same process, RCT, CLP, portion core, then crown. Okay, here you can see here this is one case where again the patient, this one attempt we have done in 2017 we have done. See, the patient desperately wanted to save the tooth. Okay, it was a crown proper, you can see a fracture line and a halo, like so what we did is we did a root resection. You can see the root resection we have done, and apical root and filling we have done, and it is done. So here in the 2018 when the patient came like this, it was coming down, and in 2019 May, you can see there is a one more fracture here. Okay, the mesial side of the root is fractured slightly, crown. But patient didn't have it was done in 19, it was fractured, and patient again came in 20 after around 9-10 months. Everything is same, nothing is changed. Patient does not have any problem. So we kept it like that. But we told the patient that, see, there is a fracture line. So either the tooth entirely should goes for extraction, or we can do a hemisection. One side of the root is this side of crown, and a root is removed, and this acts like a premolar. We can give a bridge, or we can place an implant. Okay, this is, but patient does not have any clinical symptoms. Patient is, maybe in future, if a patient develops a clinical symptom, can go for a hemisection or complete extraction. So this is some methods they have done long back. People have done a case reports. People have done in a vertical fracture. You don't believe, people have removed the tooth, and there is so many case reports that extraction of the tooth joined the vertical root fracture using a bonding mechanism. They have joined with either glass ionomer or resin cements. Some people have tried cyanoacrylate as well. There are case reports of joining a tooth vertical root fracture with the cyanoacrylate. Okay, and surgical procedure is done. So many case reports of removing the tooth from the socket, joining outside, and re-implanting it. So there is oblique fractures. Again, it is very uncommonly seen, and it is notorious for a failure. So I would like to conclude by saying that treatment of fracture may be painstaking for both dentists and patients. Majorly, we have to do an evidence-based clinical approach. It is very important. It is not like heroic attempt to save the tooth. We have to assess properly what is the cause of fracture, what is the classic signs of symptoms of the fracture, what fracture it is, which type of fracture it is, classify the fracture, and use all availability and applicability of diagnostic methods. You use modern techniques. So come to a conclusion, do a differential diagnosis, rule out all the least possibilities, and determine the prognosis, whether it is worth to do this, to save the tooth or to extract. And if you're feeling that if it is little worth, definitely save the tooth and come to a final diagnosis and restore the tooth. Okay, if you're doing a restoration of the tooth, do a multidisciplinary approach. Take help of a periodontist, take help of a prosthodontist, endodontist. Do the justice to the treatment, and pros and cons to be weighed upon. Tell the patient and do a proper treatment plan, and whether to save the tooth or extract and go for a fixed process or implants. So I would like to say that mistakes should never be named as experience. Correcting the mistake is a learning experience. True experience comes when you get exposed to extreme conditions in the exaggerated manner. Mistakes everybody does. What is that? We have to learn from our mistakes and get an experience of correcting the mistake. That is how we become successful. Everyone, even when I started my practice, I didn't know what clue about root canal treatment. When 2002, once I did my PhD, and then I come to know, or I did everybody does, they do the mistakes and they learn. But it should not be like we should do should not be a shortcut. We should always try for a best to do the patient. Think patient as like it's your livelihood, and do a dentistry from your bottom of heart. Dentistry should be the passion, because I bet that many of the people, dentistry is a second choice. We didn't get MBBS and came to a dentistry. But for me also it was second choice. But I am proud that I'm a dentist. I am proud that I'm working on a patient. I'm a workaholic. I'm very proud that I'm doing justice to my profession. I do a lot of courses, and offline, online courses, and these are all my modules in Pune itself. I always believe that work, career, business, performance, responsibility, life, health, family, friend, and happiness should be equal. Then your life will be successful, and you will be a balanced person. You gave me the time, the most thoughtful gift of all. Thank you so much, Team WDA, Shalini ma'am, Abhishek, Anand, Saurabh. A huge thanks to you all for giving me an opportunity in this huge global platform. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful session. And you made it easy, such a difficult topic, and you made it so easy for us. I wish I could whistle now. I wish I could whistle now here in front of everybody.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
Pradeep, they were 85 minutes which just flew past, and I am looking at the clock now and I'm realizing that you've been talking to us for almost an hour and a half. And we really did not come to know, at least for me, I would say that I did not come to know at all. And from the comments that I can see, a lot of people also have tuned in and they're enjoying this very much. So, Abhishek,
Thank
should I start the round of questions?
Yes, ma'am. Please, ma'am.
Okay. Pradeep, these are the questions which I'm picking up from the comment feed. The first one which is asked for your, they've asked about which is your choice of cement for reattachment.
So in for a reattachment cases, it depends upon the if it is reattachment just for a in a crown level, I'll go for a simple resin adhesives. If it is if it is in the if it is inhibits with the or little crown root level or below the cervical level, sometimes you should be very careful that resin cements may impair the periodontal health. So in such cases, it's always GAC as a luting cement, and you can do with the self-etch adhesive resins also sometimes, but it should be very careful.
Another question almost similar is, do you recommend cusp buildups in posterior teeth?
Yes.
And if you do, then how do you do it?
Yes. Yeah.
This question is from Soumya.
Separate lecture for this, I suppose.
Yes, I believe in cusp buildup. I love to do a cusp buildup because it a cusp buildup technique for an posterior teeth. It's almost it gives a all like oblique increment placement, many increment methods of placement it fulfills. Plus, you can do in a very quick in a session. You can do a wonderful carving because you'll have to. It's a carving is nothing but you are making a inclines of the cusp. So cusp buildup is nothing but making a inclines where the incline joins the groove forms, and
Yes.
it's automatically everything comes into. So you need not carve again. Your carving time is completely reduced. So I do always do a cusp buildup. There is no look forward that.
Which type of composite do you recommend for a cusp buildup?
I usually use there are so many types of. I use a nano clusters. I use a nano filled one because it's a nano cluster I use.
Okay. Another question is, does CLP, if it changes the zenith of the tooth, particularly in the aesthetic zone, then how do you manage it? This question is from Priyanka Pitle.
Yeah. What happens in a CLP? We have a certain drawbacks. So when you do a CLP, you'll have to consider the zenith point of view. If a patient is a high lip line, when a smile while smiling, gummy smile is there. If a zenith does not takes place, then you'll have to go for a mucogingival surgery or you'll have to alter the gum gingival exposure. So okay, if it is it is not coming into the smile line, definitely you need not worry about such a difficult procedures. But if it is coming into a zenith is hampering your while doing a CLP, zenith is hampered, then ortho extrusion is the best option. Okay. So otherwise, if you can go for like I have shown few cases where my zenith is gone like apically. Okay, so where otherwise I would have because it's a smile line, it was not visible. That is the reason I was going and been to then otherwise zenith should be considered.
At this point, I must tell you that the follow-up in your cases is just brilliant. The way you managed to get the patients back, and you also said that once the pain is gone, the patient is gone as well. And something similar, Ruchika told us last time. So for you to get those patients back tells us what an amazing rapport you have with the patients, and to have a follow-up of even 2 years is good, and you have follow-ups of 10 years and 12 years, which was truly amazing to see. I mean, I know you so much and I've seen so much of your work, but I have not seen this. So it was really an eye-opener for me also. And it was just amazing to see it, Pradeep.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Actually, I always my motto in my clinical practice is like I respect my patients. I always because every patient will be called as sir and madam, and it's been by me and I tell every my staff also, because you should respect the patient. You have to have a good rapport. It is not a question of just like just a business relationship. It has to be because you don't believe, ma'am, that one patient that I did a crown reattachment. She was a she's eighth or ninth standard girl. So they were reluctant that it was just called them for a last week in this lockdown. They're reluctant to come to a clinic. But since I called, they just came
They've
after
come.
her. They
Okay.
come to in this period also. They came for a follow up. That is one thing.
That is amazing. Yes. Yes.
We feel good.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm doing something to the society.
Seriously.
I think this question is again from Priyanka Pitle. She's asking about your experience with food lodgement and how do you prevent it after you've done reattachments and built up the crowns in the anterior zone.
Exactly. So this is one of the biggest drawback, because patient acceptance and patient follow up, and patient should maintain the oral hygiene
Maintenance.
properly.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, if it is, it's you have to educate the patient, because patient have a habit tendency that if you say that if you don't have food now, they'll immediately go downstairs and try having a food. It's a common thing. Like they try, they can't, will test it. So it's your duty to educate the patient that you have done something good. I
Yes.
have taken pain to do the thing. So you have to manage that. Otherwise, it's little of your time and your money and my time and my effort will go waste.
Yes.
So
I agree. So, what is your opinion about prognosis when there are multiple fractures in the same tooth?
it's
So, if
actually
there
it
are
is
fractures at various levels, then what is the
prognosis is poor, very poor.
so
Actually,
what you do you just let go of the tooth then? I mean, or do you attempt? Would you recommend that something heroic be recommended? I mean, be done to try and save the tooth?
I had attempted few cases like here, because see what ultimately matters is like patient should be of your you should take a patient into a confidence if you are attempting some cases like that, because ultimately patient is the one who is going to complain, who is going to tell that no, you have done a good job or you have not done a good job. If your patient is agreeing or patient has the confidence in you, or if you're thinking that prognosis is not poor, if you're taking, then that matters. But if a patient is not cooperative, patient is not able to understand you, better not to do a heroic attempt. Just go for a plain whatever the protocol, safe protocol, what for you in future. So
Okay.
that's what I learned from my experience of 14-15 years
Let
of.
go of such teeth.
Yeah, exactly. So initially, what happens in a clinical practice, you get everything, you try to do all the patients, but after some
Yes.
time, learn that what not to do,
Yes.
what
That's equally important.
which patient you should not attempt such things. That is how you have to learn. That is how you have to learn with the experience.
Okay, what if you I mean, is there a chance of the pulp getting exposed when you're giving bevels? You mentioned you're giving two kind of bevels. So when you're doing these beveling, is there a chance that
What
you are going to end up exposing the pulp?
what I do is, if it is suppose it's an anterior fracture, it's almost very near to the pulp. I give a bevel on the buccal side of the fracture, buccal margin, bucco, what you say, pulpal line angle. Okay, I don't touch the inside part at all. Just make a like unsupported enamel. How we remove? I do remove the unsupported enamel from the buccal aspect and palatal aspect. Then I'll continue as a secondary plane. I don't touch the center portion where the pulp is nearby. So
Okay.
that is the method I do. And sometimes, if it is too much required, I give a sunburst appearance for a better adaptation sometimes. But usually, I give a plain primary bevel and a secondary bevel. So it helps in the more surface area for the adhesion. There are two things. Either one thing is it demarcates, it merges the demarcation line. First thing. Second, also it gives a more surface area for a bonding. So tooth, your restoration holds the tooth like it's like a wrapping, buccal side and a palatal side.
Palatal
So
side.
it gives,
And what about the management of hypersensitivity after the restoration has been done? If that is encountered, how do you take care of it, or how do you take care of it whilst you are actually doing the procedure?
yes. So because when you're going very near to the pulp, there are chances that there is patients definitely gets a sensitivity for some time. So that there, if I find that if it is very near, because you'll come to know while doing if you blow a air while preparing, or if you put a water itself, it is becoming a sensitivity. Then what we do is initial itself I apply a pulp protection. So directly I don't go to a resin or a composite resin. I give a pulp protection, then go for a resin or a composite resin buildup. So it makes the sensitivity less. Okay, then
Okay.
in such cases, I always go for a 7th generation bonding agent. I never go for a 5th generation bonding agent near the area. I do a selective etch and do a universal 3M universal whatever 7th generation or 8th generation bonding agent, so that it'll the smear layer is modified. So
Okay.
that is how we do it. But if
Uh,
at all, if it is unbearable, then we'll have to go for a RC later.
RC. What about the agents that can be used for pulp protection in these anterior fractures?
So you can go for normal acid-base reaction GIC or resin-modified GIC, because resin-modified GIC is becoming better because it gives a composite resin and a resin everything. It becomes a one monolink. So I always go for a GIC, and there
Does does the use of this GIC, does it compromise the aesthetic narrative in that tooth?
So the GIC resin modified GIC, which has a shades like A2, A3. So I try to go with the shade usually, resin modified GIC.
Okay. So have you what do you recommend that MTA should be used in anterior teeth or should not be used in anterior teeth, given the fact that it could lead to discoloration somewhere down the line?
Exactly. If it is doing a proper like a class 3 like cavity pulp capping, there you MTK, so that it can be completely biodentin is better. If nowadays we do a biodentin for most of the cases compared to the
Okay.
MTA. But if you are, it's like if you're able to wrap it completely, then it is better. Otherwise, it's a pulp capping with you have to have a proper surface for the area or a bulk for the restoration material. Otherwise, it doesn't look nice. And even though there are because it's a restorative dentistry is so much ahead now, we get so many materials to mask that, like opaquer we get, or the shades which you get as a dentin shades. They are all
Yes.
they mask the
Good at
underlying.
camouflaging.
I have a question, ma'am.
I'll just complete my question. Sorry. Okay. So the last part to this is, Pradeep, that what is your choice of composite resins in anterior teeth? That will be the last one from me.
If I should not go for a trade name as well. If I go to a trade name wise,
No, but just the
ceramic
type. Just the type.
nano cluster, and I use
Okay.
cloud shade, a lot of cloud shades, and nano filled, nano hybrid, and a nano filled, nano cluster I use.
Okay.
And with good polishing techniques.
Okay. So now Abhishek can finally ask his set.
Ma'am, please continue with your questions. I have
No,
my
no.
question. I will ask in the last. No problem.
No. Go ahead. I'm done. I think I can't see any more.
Okay, ma'am. Sir, I have a question. I have a case with more than Shalini, ma'am. If I remember rightly, you have seen that case. I have a follow-up of 12 years. It was a
Okay.
fractured central incisor
Yes.
and we reattached it with MTA direct pulp capping. Now
Okay.
MTA is famous for discoloration. Now the tooth is
Correct.
totally discolored, but it is still vital and the fragment is still attached. What should be done now?
So if you have reattached the only color discoloration, so you can just don't completely disrupt the bonding. So you can just there are the good composites that you can merge it nicely.
Okay.
With the giving a bevels and giving a V-shaped notch, you can merge it.
Okay.
Or you can go for a veneer directly.
Right, sir.
Underlying discoloration is too much, and veneer, there are chances that it can be see-through. Only that is the only the
Yes, that is a very good possibility.
But that is one of a big drawback of using a MTA discolors after some time, where then clinical dilemma comes: how to mask the discoloration, what to do, what not to do, because it's a composite. Also,
I am afraid of doing, sir, crown preparation on that tooth. I may disturb that line.
Exactly.
Yes.
Such a good, and everything is working so fine except the discoloration. If you do anything slightly also, that will hamper your good bonding.
Yes.
So you should use MT or not? I'm still confused.
Nowadays, biodentin is better for a pulp capping purpose, but its discoloration is less when compared to the MTA. That time MTA was also 10-12 years back. MTA was also gray color. It was not white one. White one was
yes.
yeah. gray color. It was more notorious for a discoloration. But nowadays we get a little better one. You get an injectable MTAs. It's little better comparatively.
Right.
But by so bulb capping, because it should be taken care that future there are chances of discoloration. That has to be there.
That has to be there.
That
Right,
is
sir.
there.
I think we are done with the questions tonight. If Shalini ma'am, do you have any question anymore?
No, I can ask him tomorrow also. So I'm not going to extend the session any longer. But yes,
Okay.
we have wrapped up most of the questions that appeared in the feed. And it was just tremendous. The whole, 1 hour, 40 minutes just flew past, and I didn't even realize that we have been here for so long now.
Yes. Ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable time, sir. It was an amazing session. Seriously, we learned so many things in the session of today. It is definitely going to help many youngsters, I am sure. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pradeep. Good night.
Thank
Good
you
night.
so
Good night,
much.
Abhishek.
Good night. Questionnaire we will
Abhishek,
be.
announce the next lecture.
Yes, ma'am. We will be uploading. We will be doing some announcements very soon. We are
Yeah.
preparing something for Independence Day, and we will make the announcements in a day or two. And be ready for the questionnaire tonight. We will be uploading very shortly. Thank you so much. See you all. Bye bye. Good night.
Bye. Good night. Good night, Pradeep.
Yeah, good night, ma'am. Good night. Bye.